members of committees, and members of our executive committee, who are all members of steering. We have a great treat tonight, a presentation from Joli of the U.S. Census Bureau. She holds the key to unlocking a treasure trove of the latest data on our district. But first, I want to focus on one matter that has become an unwelcome burden for me, and I suspect for all of the committee co-chairs, and that's waivers to attend meetings remotely. A number of board members remain confused about how to navigate the hybrid meeting world. I personally find the rationale behind some of the requirements in the open meeting law unworkable, inscrutable, and somewhat punitive. Still, it's the law, and we need to comply or put at risk the legality of our resolutions and our work. And that would not be a good thing. The current hybrid meeting regulations sunset this June. The legislature will be voting to continue or modify them. I've already testified before a hearing on the open meeting law held by the borough president last month and recommended changes. I made clear that I was speaking as an individual, not on behalf of the board. I urge members to let our state elected officials know your concerns so they can be aware if new legislation takes shape. For now, as committee co-chairs, it's your responsibility to grant waivers for extraordinary circumstances for remote attendance at your meetings. And here are the rules as I understand them. Committee members must reach out to you well ahead of the meeting with a reason for their request for a waiver. It must fit the criteria in our bylaws for an extraordinary circumstance. Disability, and these are in quotes, right? This is the language of our bylaws. Disability, illness, caregiving responsibilities, unexpected work, travel, unexpected weather conditions that cause unsafe travel conditions due to accessibility needs, and medical conditions of a member or a close contact of the member creating vulnerability to COVID or other infectious diseases. When you get a request, you must respond in writing. As you waive requests, remember that those you grant waivers to will not count towards the quorum you need to do business, though they may vote. You will need to use judgment to balance compassion for the problems your members bring to you with the need to see that the work of the committee proceeds. Exercising that judgment can be uncomfortable, as I know from experience. You must announce in the meeting which committee members have been granted waivers and the general reason why. If you agree to a waiver, the committee member must show up on Zoom, or they should be marked absent. Showing up means they must be visible to the public, camera on, and present in front of the camera. A brief time with the camera off to heed a call of nature is fine, but anyone with the camera off for a significant portion of a meeting should be marked absent. If you are too sick to leave the camera on, then you're too sick to participate in the meeting. Please make that point clear to your members. The law states the public body shall ensure that members of the public body can be heard, seen, and identified while the meeting is being conducted. When you grant waiver requests, please remind committee members of this language in the open meeting law. You need to turn the attendance into the office promptly after the meeting so they can post it on YouTube, where we now have our minutes. You've been relieved of the responsibility of creating separate minutes, but this is a requirement still. It's pretty simple. Just a list of who was there, who wasn't there, and that's about it. I'll let you know if I approve a waiver for temporary or permanent disability to any member of your committee. These rare waivers allow a board member to both count for quorum and vote for multiple meetings. I'll follow up by sending these notes to the co-chairs, and that would be so you can have them in writing to refer to. Please enforce these requirements, and if you don't like them, lobby hard to have them changed. Yeah.
Beverly, earlier in that description, you were saying requests for waivers must be well in advance. Can you describe what you mean by well in advance?
I think our bylaws say 4 hours.
At least 4 hours.
What I have tried to do myself is if I get them within the 4 hour window, I try to respond to them, but I don't guarantee that I can. if I'm, busy or trying to do something to get ready for the meeting, I may not be able to. So if people wish to be assured of the waiver, they should give it at least 4 hours. Yeah.
I would just suggest that in addition to sending this to the co-chairs, that you send it to everybody. So that people are aware in advance of what they can expect if they're asking for a waiver.
Okay, we could do that. I particularly want the co-chairs who have the responsibility to be really, really clear on what has gone down.
And then to add to Barbara.
Yeah.
Barbara's point, I think would be also helpful to actually bring this up at the next board meeting. That way,
Sorry to interrupt, Aiden, we've lost audio on the Zoom. For those on Zoom that can hear me, we're going to restart. The Zoom, so you may have to log back in a minute. Oh, hang on.
To give the district manager report.
I think it just came back on. I heard something. I think it's my time to give the district manager report. Before I do that, can everyone that's on Zoom just shake your head if you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
I think we have to move the agenda first.
Thank you.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm not forgetting anything.
Please, just a show of hands. Is there anyone who, okay, if you're in favor of the agenda as posted, please raise your hand. Okay, good. Any opposed? No. Any abstentions? No. Okay. And I can't imagine somebody not approving the agenda for cause. So we should that one.
Only you.
Okay. Thank you very much for the reminder. And now over to Max.
Okay, thanks. Well, first, I'm going to add thank you to Aiden sitting there at the table for very quickly getting the Zoom back up and running. Or the audio. I really appreciate it. Next, a less positive topic. This is a very important reminder to submit draft resolutions prior to full board and then finalized resolutions after full board in a timely manner to co-chairs. I hesitate to say this, but a submission of resolutions has only gotten worse over the last few months. It was my hope that in alleviating the burden of written minutes, committees would submit resolutions in a more timely manner, and that's proven to not be the case. You and your committees do a lot of good, thoughtful work passing solid resolutions. However, in many instances, the board chair and I really need these resolutions when working with other city agencies, other boards, and with reporters who have the capacity to amplify what we say in our resolutions. In this last 2-week period alone, Beverly and I urgently needed finalized resolutions 3 separate times, and we weren't able to get them quickly enough because finalized resolutions weren't submitted to the office. So this is a reminder to do that. It's very important. On a more positive note, I did send an email out, but it is time for community board reappointments. You have until February 19th, I think. It's a Friday, end of day, to submit that. And if you didn't receive the link, I know I sent it out to everyone, but we can send it out again. If you missed the email, just reach out to me. And Beverly already covered the other, my last point, which was co-chairs needing to approve requests for hybrid participation and then looping the office in so we can send a Zoom link. And that's my report.
Max, I have a question.
Yeah.
In regards to reapplying for the board, was your email specifically for members who need to reapply, or was it a blank? Was it just shot out to everyone? I just want to know. I think I'm up for. I think I have to do it this year, but I'm not too sure.
We found a link from the borough president's office. It's not fully up to date, but it's mostly up to date of when everyone's term expires. So I can send that out as well. Actually, we didn't realize they had that, and again, they don't have a couple of our newest board members, and they have a couple people still on the list that recently resigned. But I know you're on there, and I'll send it out to the whole group as well.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, of course. And that's my report.
The folks who have to apply are the ones whose 2-year terms are being completed this spring.
Except some people have 1-year terms.
Unless you were appointed to the rump end of a term of somebody who
They
left.
may not.
Right.
But my understanding also is that the borough president's office will be in touch with everybody who needs to reapply, as they have been in the past. Okay, now over to Roberta.
So I want to introduce Joli. Joli worked on this 2020 census, and the committee board worked with her then. And then we started in 2019. As we all know, the pandemic hit. Joli did come back to one of our steering meetings a year or two ago and did a wonderful presentation. And then recently, Joli and I met, and we decided it'd be really helpful for all the committee chairs and the committees. When we're looking at the district needs statement, what we're looking at budget priorities, having data about them is really helpful. And I'm happy to say that 3 of the 4 members of the budget committee are here. That is Seema and Carey and myself. And so Joli did an hour presentation with us where we went through some information, and she's going to go through that. But I'll just give you an example of she narrowed it down. And this is in health, more for the Health and Human Services Committee, but it's the way that each committee could find. I'll give you an example that'll sort of explain things. So let's say there's a playground in the district that nobody goes to because they're rats and it's deserted and the equipment is in really bad repair. And so the Parks Committee or YL wants to work together and find out more information about this playground. It turns out there are 2 schools in proximity to the playground, but they won't use it because it's not safe. And then you can go through the census data for the census blocks in the area and see that there are 500 children living in those 3 census or 4 census blocks. And so that's data to give you why this playground should be refurbished. And now I turn it over to Jill. We'll do a much more interesting.
What a wonderful introduction. So Max, are you going to bring up the presentation?
Sure. Would you like me to do that now?
That would be great. So we're going to do a very abbreviated look at what I spent an hour with Roberta and Seema and Alex and others in October, actually it was. But I did take the liberty of pulling up more data snapshots of doing a little more graphing of some of the data that might be of interest, just to give you a sense of the depth of what's available and different ways that you can look at it. So Max, can you go to presentation mode? So we see full
Sure,
screen?
I'm looking for it actually.
You have it up there. And now if you just go to slideshow, oh, click enable editing. Because that should let you move. And then go to slideshow and it's view from current slide at the top.
Sure. Sorry, where are you seeing slideshow?
At the top, there's a menu. Do you see the headers on the
I do, yeah. Because I was looking under file and home. It just looks like this is the typical editing.
slide to the right, and it says slideshow.
Oh, got it. There we go. Let me minimize that.
But you know what? You can just click through this way too. It's fine. And there
Okay.
you go. From current slide.
Sorry about that. From current slide, here we go.
Max, at the
There we
bottom of the screen. Oh, there you go. You got
Yep.
it.
Cool. Thanks. All right. So just tell me when, and just note there's like a second or two delay from when you say when to when it actually implements.
When? So as Roberta mentioned, I had the great pleasure of working with Community Board 7, a number of other community boards and many other organizations during the decennial census, when we counted everyone only once and in the right place. Counting 338 million people took a lot of manpower. It's the largest, right? It's the largest non-military operation of the government. And I was one of 1,500 partnership staff across the country. Now I'm one of 35 or so data dissemination specialists. And I'm the only one in New York City, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. Next slide.
Hang on.
So
You guys didn't see the change, right?
Yeah.
yeah, but we're hopeful. So
How about now?
if I guess we're there. If there are things that you don't catch during today, or you want to look and dive a little deeper, there are recorded webinars and other ways that you can look at census data. I'm also happy to set up either online or in person another deeper session like we did earlier this year. So next slide.
We already gave the hour presentation at
It was a separate,
is it-
right?
did
It
a
was a
special-
standalone.
We invited the budget committee and we invited a few people that had.
it wasn't
Hey,
recorded.
Max, it didn't
Yeah.
switch.
Oh, good. So yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
know. I think there's some inability for it to do so. Let me try one thing. If I turn tell me if it's still up when I do this.
Just use your arrow buttons on your keyboard, or if you click on the press.
Oh yeah, that is what I'm using, the arrow button. You're saying if I click on it, it won't click out of it?
No, it should just advance the next slide when it's in slideshow mode. This is like a new gig for you, Max.
Well, I've been doing PowerPoint since the 5th grade. Not sure it's that new, but I think what happens is because I'm streaming the Zoom and doing this, it's kind of overloading the computer. Because I'm doing the arrow button and I'm also clicking, and it's not. I think it's just overloading it. You may have to try it yourself, actually.
What if I share my screen? Because I'm
Yeah.
gonna do thing. And let's see if it all will come up. All right, what do we
Yes,
see
it's
here?
coming up.
It's coming up. All right, here we go. It's there. We see it. Great. All right, this should hopefully make things much quicker, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
There we go.
So we'll cover a little bit about census data and programs. Look at some data snapshots for CB7's district. The nice thing about CB7 is it falls within a public use microdata area that's just for CB7. Just maps to CB7, so you can get a fair amount of data for the community board district, in addition to looking at smaller geographies like census tracts, and then using the CB7 boundary to see what lies within. If we have time and interest, we'll look at a interesting newer tool called My Community Explorer. And I'll also show you how to create a thematic map by census tract. This is something you totally can try at home. You can use data.census.gov as much as you'd like. It is helpful sometimes to look a little further with someone doing a demo for you. So in terms of the Bureau itself, we don't stop working between the decennial census and the next decennial census. So the next one coming up is 2030. We conduct over 130 other surveys and programs. One of the more well-known is the American Community Survey, and then the Economic Census, which we just did. Any of you business owners may have received calls or, various mailings about the Economic Census. So that data should be coming out sometime next year. We only do that every 5 years. So in terms of the decennial census, I know I have a very engaged group here in civic affairs. Anyone want to speak to? You could even look on the slide. Primary uses of the decennial census. In 2020, who lost a seat?
New York
New
State.
York, yeah.
New York State, right, lost a seat. I include this, all of these are hyperlinked in the presentation, which I'll share, Max can share it afterwards. But you can see this is a historical apportionment map in terms of who's gaining seats. Texas gained 2 or more seats. The lighter blue state gained, right? Florida gained a seat. We lost a seat along with, and we weren't alone in losing a seat. Those orange states lost seats. But the interesting thing is you can look at the historical data and go back and see when New York as a state was gaining representation. So now we have 26 seats in Congress. In the House, we used to have we had 45 seats in 1940. So, yes, population.
How much of that is gerrymandering versus population migration?
No, you can look at population. It's population,
Okay.
population based. So back in 2000, we used to put out a long and short form of the decennial census. So some of you might have gotten an 8-page form and some of you got a 1-page form. Now we only do the short form, but we made a change in about 2005, we started collecting data annually instead of doing that long form through the American Community Survey. So the American Community Survey has over 72 questions. You can write in certain responses, and it's a real snapshot of what's happening in the American public year over year. And it covers 35 or more topics. It's used in many data tools, and the results are released every year, twice a year. So the smaller geographies are released in December, and the larger geographies, over 65,000 in population and size, are released in September. So the nice thing about meeting in January is that we have already released all of the 2022 data for the American Community Survey. So the results that I will share with you show data up to 2022.
Does the ACS go to everyone, or is it just a
It goes to
representative
a
sample?
sampling. So census versus survey, right? Census is anyone want to hazard a guess? Census is a head count, right? It's an each and every count, as opposed to, even if we're gathering the data by household. Survey is where we're taking a sampling and then projecting estimates off of that data. So that's the American Community Survey. So one thing just to know about how we collect data in terms of all of those questions, how we collect data by race and ethnicity. We currently collect data through Hispanic, Spanish, or Latino origin separately, separate question from race. What's happening now is we're taking a very deep dive into combining those two questions based upon how people have responded recently to the census and ACS. So there's the Office of Management and Budget has been taking in public comment, has a big working group going on, and we're looking at how that data will be collected and then how those results will be shared. The census data is often in the news, in case anyone was wondering. Yes, people are returning to cities still after that remote work exodus. But there's a lot of remote workers here, especially in Community Board 7. When you look at the data for the United States, it's about 15% of people are working remotely. Whereas, and this is a question we recently started asking. I think it was during the pandemic we started asking it. But CB7 has roughly 30% of people who work remotely. Yeah, so that's a big difference. So when you see those lunch shops popping up more, you know, they're closing in Midtown, maybe they're opening here. When we look at census data, geography is really important. So this is a sampling of all of the categories of geography that you can search by. So zip code tabulation area is really zip code. If you're looking for cities, you're looking for places. Some of these geographies nest really nicely within one another, right? A census tract is part of a county, is part of a county, is part of a state, et cetera, et cetera. And some blur the lines. So zip code tabulations areas are one of those things. That's literally the aerial view of where the postal service worker goes on their route. It's just something helpful to know. And if you ever wanted to know, what can I find? What topics are available? What does the American Community Survey ask about? These are all of the topics. So it's everything from SNAP and health insurance to disability and citizenship voting age, and even how you heat your home. So a lot going on there, and I'll show you how to get to these DP, which are data profile tables. The nice thing about those tables are they really have a comprehensive look at a lot of data within that category. So people who are on the housing committee are also always usually very happy to look at DP05. When you find a table that you like, it's good to write down that you know, the name of it, or you can bookmark it, or you can copy the URL. It just makes it easy to get back to. So today I was looking a little bit at population breakdown in Community Board 7's public use microdata area. And you can see there total population from 2016 to 2022. And yes, 2020 is missing because we did not release one-year estimates for that year due to issues with data collection at certain levels, yeah. But you can see the population 65 plus is in orange, and the population 18 and under is in gray. And it just gives you, when people say, oh, people are moving back in the city, well, you can see that the 2019 population was about 185,000, and the 2022 population is closer to 230. So that's a significant jump in terms of population.
Why isn't there a population for under 18 to 2016?
For 2016, you know, sometimes the tables shift, and the table that I was looking at didn't have that particular line item, so I didn't. You could aggregate it and find it from other tables. I just didn't have time this afternoon to look at that one, but I promise you there are 18 and under. There were people under 18 living here in 2016.
I have a question on the fertility data point. What does that measure?
That measures women ages 20 to 50. So it's not birth and death rates. You would get that from the Department of Health. But we actually do use, we have separate population estimates. So sometimes people are concerned about the 2020, you know, the decennial census. We collect all of this data, and then there's $2.8 trillion of federal funding that's allocated based on that data. Every year, we also do population estimates that are taken from birth, death, and migration data. from administrative records so that we can update and make sure that we're still allocating that money correctly. Here's another snapshot of something very different, which I found fascinating when I first started looking at education school enrollment data in the Community Board 7 district. You can see that there are, I'd look more at the elementary data. I'm not sure why the nursery and kindergarten data seems really skewed, but the elementary data up through high school from pretty much 1 to 12 shows a fairly close race between the private and public school enrollment. Private school enrollment is in deeper blue. Is in orange, and the public school enrollment is in blue. So that was startling to me. I don't know, thinking in my head, like having grown up in a suburb where everyone just went to, it was so rare that someone went to private school. But here you can see that there is there's a large population. This looks very different when you go to the outer boroughs. As does, data varies tremendously from borough to borough, but it's definitely speaks to some of the other demographics.
I just want to hold on that school one a minute, because the nursery and kindergarten data is so different from the elementary.
Yeah, I'm wondering,
if it's a data issue rather than.
Well, it may be a reporting issue or where it's coming from, but I would look at the elementary through high school data is definitely.
These are private, that they're not public schools, but it's public money that's supporting the school.
Right,
So
just because
by
this tells a story where my quick interpretation would be that unfortunate private school bump is like kind of a pandemic impact, and then we're backfilling between nursery and kindergarten. However, those numbers are so.
Right, I can pull up the education enrollment data from 2018, and you'll see there's a significant private school enrollment in this district.
Yeah.
So another statistic that people look at often in terms of what's happening nationwide is gross rent as a percentage of household income. I was just in front of the Bronx Borough Board, and their numbers are even higher. So 34.6% of the population in CB7's district are spending, 38.4 as of 2021, are spending 35% more of their household income on rent. This is,
and I think that's what we put in our district needs statement.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's affecting not just our city, but cities across the country, especially in certain areas where rent has just been skyrocketing in Seattle and Phoenix and other places. I was with the New York State Department of Health last week, and we were talking about, they're doing a lot of outreach about people, they're always doing outreach to people who are uninsured, but right now what's sort of interesting is that for people who have public health insurance, that those renewals were happening automatically during the pandemic and up until last year. Now they're not automatic, so there's been a lot of outreach by the Department of Health to make sure that people are re-upping on those benefits. They said at this point, they're pretty much at 87%. New York has an extraordinarily high rate of people with healthcare coverage, with health insurance. It's about literally 4.9% of New York State is uninsured. If you look at people may be moving to Texas, but it is at the bottom of whether people are insured. So it's something that the Department of Health was very proud of.
Could you tell us what are the key, because it's hard to see those,
So
what
this
the
is
different greens are.
the different greens. Sorry, that's not my phone. So the different greens relate to this is population improvement. Property status is determined who's also uninsured. So the ones that are in a thematic map like this, the area that's deeper green will be greater in population, And when you look at the key, let's see if we can just go to the. So I included the hyperlinks for the table, so this is actually going to should bring me right to the map, and now the map is populating. So when I look at here and I click on this, I can see that 1,035 people, I believe, are uninsured and below the poverty line. These are all the variables here. So I'm just looking to see if poverty was. And this is the number. I can also look at the percent. And if I looked at the percent, the whole map would change. So this is percent insured of civilian non-institutionalized, so not in prisons or college dorms, et cetera, versus this is percent insured, and I'm gonna change the dimension to uninsured. And my map just changed. So if I looked here and I wanted to know, what is there? First of all, you could zoom in and make the map, add in a base map. So you can see more detail. You can add in the boundaries. I talked about adding in boundaries for public use microdata areas, so you can see the community board boundaries on the map. And then if I wanted to see more about this specific census tract, where 10% of people are uninsured, I could click on it and it would bring me to what's called a geographic profile, which will populate. There are over 9,000, usually census tracts around 4,000 in size. Sometimes if there's public housing, if there's housing development, the city doesn't like to divide those census tracts. But you can click on any of these tables and it'll get you more information about this particular tract. And you can also see this nice population pyramid, which shows you a little bit about how old the population is and how it's split male, female. And more and more. And then when I want to go back.
Is each tract there, I'm just visually looking at is that 8 city blocks or something in that?
Each tract, so the nice thing, these are really nice tracts. Like they're very geographically, we're really in the grid part of the city. And when you look at this, when I look, if I want to see what's underneath there, I can go to colors and lighten this up a little bit so it's more transparent. And then you can see that this is around 1, 2, 3, about 6 city blocks, 8 city blocks. It depends on the tract. It depends on what's there. Sure. So
is that to say that if you had, let's say, a huge housing development, public housing or not, that might lead to a smaller size census tract?
No, what happens is when the population grows in an area, we will subdivide the census tract. So all of a sudden you'll see, it won't just be 153, it'll be 153.01, 153.02.
Okay.
And that means when you see that means the tracts have been subdivided. Sometimes we work with the local cities and planning departments. Sometimes the city says, we'd rather you not subdivide that housing development. It's better for us if it's not subdivided.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when you'll see, but it still won't get above a certain, it might be 10,000, 12,000 max, like you won't see above that in a census tract. Would be very unusual.
Could you go back to the previous slide if you don't mind?
This one?
No,
Or do you
it's
want
the
to,
map.
you want to see the map? I'll bring up the map again. Hang on. That was out of the slide and into the, here we go.
One other question just about the size of, so you said 12,000 max, is that same sort of criteria used in the suburbs and the outer boroughs, or is that just in New York
Yes,
City?
so when you look at, like, when you look at Manhattan and there's all these tiny, you know, there are all these little boxes. When you go to Wyoming, the census tracts are huge. You know, just like when you look at county data, we have enormously populated counties with 8.8 million people in the 5 boroughs. When you go to other counties in New York State, like Hamilton County is the smallest county in all of New York State, there are 5,000 people in it. That's like the size of, you know, census tract in New York City. So sorry, your question
Yeah,
here?
the map that you had.
So this is a map, this is the table that I'm looking at is S2701. It's selected characteristics of health insurance coverage.
It was the detailed map that I'm referring to. Which
Oh,
actually shows
meaning
some streets.
that shows, right, so you can look at the base map. So this is, so I put the, so I don't know if I just put the base map in or I put in, yeah, so here's a detailed base map. So you can look at the base map and I made the color of the map lighter so that I could see what was underlying that.
All right, looks good now. Thank you.
That base map, that looks good. So you can play with your map. You can also play with the key right here if you wanted not, you know, if you wanted to look at many less census tracts with a certain population or that are insured or uninsured. We're back to insured here. So back to uninsured.
And you can't change it, so you can always go back to where.
Yeah, you can always manipulate you can't manipulate the underlying statistics, but you can manipulate the map.
To what extent do these census tracts map to voting precincts?
The voting, it's,
Not correlated at all?
well, look at voting districts, but it's not, the census tracts were created actually based upon input from the way back down in Battery Park was where they were first created at the lower tip of Manhattan for the whole country, because the Federation of Churches wanted to see data year over year within a specific geography.
Okay.
So it has nothing to do with voting. It all has to do with measuring the population and being able to see the data year over, you know, decade over decade,
Okay.
and with the ACS year over year.
But are there pumas for, you know, assembly districts and senate
The
districts?
reason
And
for the Pumas is to give a baseline of 100,000 or more in terms of geography, so that if you wanted to look at counties in New York State, you would see that a lot of data wouldn't surface for certain counties for 1 year estimates. But if you look at Pumas, sometimes there are combined counties so that you can get that 1 year estimated data and compare it from geography to geography. You can look at boundaries and you can search. So if we went into data.census.gov and we wanted to do an advanced search, you can search by, these are the most popular geographies to search by. These ones on the left, county, census tract, state, but then I can go to all geographies and I can look at data. It's not always available for every single geography, but I can look at data for congressional districts. I can look at data for, there's school districts, which in New York isn't so great, but state legislative districts. So and here's voting districts. So you could look by voting district.
Okay, thank you.
It's not one I get a lot of requests for, but you can find it, and then you kind of just have to navigate to the state that you want to look at, and more. And then you could select all voting districts within Manhattan
Okay,
to look at that data.
okay.
So that's a little bit of geography for you. And now I think we're done with insurance and moving on to, this just gives you a sense of the most popular languages spoken at home. In Community Board 7, Spanish is a big winner, not just in all of New York City. But if we went into if we went into different boroughs and different areas, you'd see different languages would come up, right? Brighton Beach, you'd see a big Russian population.
This is, I think, other than English, right?
These are languages, yes,
She said, predominantly spoke Spanish on the Upper West Side.
but no, but this is, if the population we looked at was around 230,000 people, about 24,000 are primarily speaking Spanish at home.
See the numbers on the left side.
And these are 5-year, those were 5-year estimates. Many times board chairs have asked about, I want to see statistics year over year. I want to be able to see that data year over year, and I pulled up comparative profiles, CPO3 is economic statistics. So you can see, you could look at 2021, 2020, all for the public use microdata area for Community Board 7. And this has all sorts of employment and income data. I'm only showing you a couple of tools today. This is, these are a whole bunch of other ones that you can look at in your own time. So how are we doing? I don't wanna, I feel like I don't wanna wear out my welcome here. So these are community resilience estimates. This is a newer tool that we put out where you can see on the top, you can see the weather data, but then there are layers. There's all sorts of layering. The nice thing about where you're located, which is around here, the brown areas are where there are 3 or more risk factors. When you're looking at not just underserved populations, but communities that would be more, areas that would be more at risk if there were a pandemic or any sort of flood or weather-related disaster. These, one of the things that we look at, there are a number of different risk factors. They're not weighted. So any of the 10 different risk factors could show up. Those risk factors include no vehicle access, high poverty, disability, communication barriers if people have trouble speaking English, no health insurance, age over 65, and unemployed if below 65, and no broadband access. Broadband access is something the federal government has been very invested in with the President Biden's Broadband Act. We've been working on bringing broadband to places that don't have it.
Like Randallson Ward's Island.
Right. When you look at the community resilience estimates, I'm not going to pull them up, but it gives you nice, if you wanted to do county by county comparisons, it gives you some nice data in terms of snapshots of economic profiles, social characteristics, and more at the county level. And then I was just going to go back into data.census.gov and show you how quickly you can get to, this was households receiving SNAP. I think I used this example with some of you in the last one, but it was pretty interesting. And I got to this map, which shows you again, the thematic map with in purple, you can see the community board boundaries. Just to lead you through, and then I'll take more questions, or as I'm walking through the data here. So now I'm on the landing page for data.census.gov. I'm going to advanced search. I'm going to look for census tract, because that's the smallest geography that I want to find. And we'll go to New York. And I know this always looks really easy when I do it, and some people are total experts in this, like Alex is an expert in this, for sure. We went, Alex, you are an expert in this. I know you can find lots of things on here. So here's all census tracts within New York County. We're gonna look at 2022, that's the most recent data. And under topics, we could pick from any of these topics. So if you wanted to look at that fertility data, it would be under health. Here's income and poverty. and I'm looking at income and earnings, I could look at any data I could look by cash assistance and social insurance, but I'm gonna look at SNAP. And I come up with this table. Remember I mentioned if you like a table, like you write down the number, you can always search in the general search for that table. And I'm getting to this whole table. It's such a big table because it's all census tracts. It's over 500 tracts in New York, in New York County, which is Manhattan, that I have to click open the table. And then my table opens. And this is an enormous spreadsheet. So to make it easier to get a sense of the data, you could export it to Excel and it would pop up really quickly, but I'm going to click on map. And this is percent of households receiving food stamps or SNAP. If I wanted to change that to number, I can go to number. And I could look at people. I could also look at people below the poverty. So this is people below the poverty line receiving food stamp SNAP. I could also look at people not receiving food stamp SNAP. Hold on. So I check below the poverty line. So this is, yeah. So that's just, and then you can manipulate. Has anyone ever used a histogram?
It's been a long time.
You know, it'll come right back. So this gives me a little bit, as I manipulate this histogram here and drag this, you can see that these numbers change. So this is below the poverty level.
When we looked at it in October, we looked at areas that
Yes.
were below the poverty line and not receiving SNAP benefits. And so that would be an area to advocate as to why there's no, people
Right.
should have the benefits.
Is there something connected to housing and rent still? I guess there might be a reason why they're not applying for SNAP benefits, but right here. Why are these 764 people not getting the benefits that they could get? So this is an example of a thematic map, and that's what I have to share with you for today. So when you're doing and you can, all of this is free, just like my services. Like if you knew a grant writer or a nonprofit and you said they really need to learn about this, I'm happy to be helpful. But you can also take a snapshot of one of these maps and drop it into a presentation and credit the Census Bureau. It's a nice way to show, a data-driven analysis.
If you look at our DNS, you'll see that we quote that, we have information that is from the Census Bureau. That sort of, we get a lot of the city planning, but it will show different populations, how many seniors we have, etc.
Did anyone on the phone have any questions? I'd like to be very cognizant of people on the Zoom.
I'm
So,
looking, I don't see any hands.
Okay.
Do you get access to the underlying data? Is that something we can download? So for example, if you wanted to run correlations specifically on income versus, food stamps, a very basic one, and to see whether or not there's, if you wanted to run a statistical analysis, can you do it from that data point?
You can export data and work as you wish. You could also use our microdata access tool. This is much more, it's more complicated. Like you've got and you also, you don't have margin of error within the microdata, and it's only available at I don't think it's available at your, I'm not sure if it's the PUMS file in terms of geography. I don't know if you can't get county and tract, you can get larger geographies. So I'm just looking if you're geography, you could actually get your geography, and I'm not sure why some of them weren't loading for New York City. No, it should be here. So you should be able to get it at that PUMA level, which is 100,000 or more to run. So, and you can also run queries using our API tool.
Okay.
Okay. So there's definitely access to the raw data. You just have to be careful when you're manipulating that data. I would do a little check and balance looking in data.census.gov to make sure your ballparks are looking right. Because
Right.
sometimes when you don't lay the tool, the microdata access tool out right, it can sort of make your data not as
Tell the wrong story or.
it just, your statistics might be off and you'd be,
Yeah.
think, oh, but I think I did it right. Like you just gotta
Right,
make sure you're careful.
Got it.
Especially you can only do up to, I think you can do up to 5 different queries at a time.
Okay.
So, yeah, so you're selecting your variables and then you have to manipulate the variables after you select them sometimes, like age, you do an age breakdown. So that's, there's a 3-hour, 3-hour, I'll happily send you, can send out if you want to dive in, I'll happily send you, there's a really good 3-hour live webinar where there's a subject matter expert who teaches it. So you can ask very specific questions and.
I think you've whetted everyone's appetite tonight.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot, a tremendous amount here and clearly we could function more, in more focused ways if we were to use this data more successfully. And I'm hoping that everyone will begin to try. And we may actually come up with some way to have sessions where board members struggle through this so they get enough training to be comfortable with it. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for coming back. And I remember when you were with us years ago
Yes,
during
yeah.
the census.
Yeah.
I had a question, which is that, I mean, this is such incredible and so powerful. What I'm curious about is, obviously census is part of our constitution, right? This is something
Yes,
that
it's
we.
constitutionally mandated.
Yes. So what I'm concerned, I think there's a lot of conversation about the fear element when we're going through the census and people that will not participate because of the fear, especially
You
with
can't not
somebody.
participate.
What's that?
You can't not participate. It's illegal. You get arrested.
Well,
Right, that's what
there
people are worried about. But my question is the federal government using
Supposedly they're arrested.
higher tech, excuse me, Alex, is the federal government using higher tech tools such as GIS, AI, satellite, whatever to aid with so that the data is empirical? I'm just wondering what have we missed?
in terms of the decennial census, I mean, there's a lot that goes on with the data. I mean, there's a lot of, first of all, we're counting everyone only once. There's a lot of duplicate entries. There's a lot of group quarters counts. The 2020 was especially challenging because of the shifting population and people who were saying that they lived most of the time in a place that they don't usually live most of the time, college students moving home, et cetera, et cetera. But there are, I mean, yes, there are people at the Bureau who are focusing on AI, and there's administrative data. We're talking about using more administrative records. So that's a possibility, whether they're IRS and other data that's collected. But it's an art and a science in terms of those historically undercounted populations, whether it's children under 5 or whether it's non-citizens who are afraid of filling out the census, even though they're protected by law when they do so. It's a continual, that's why there was such a big partnership staff to try to build relationships with trusted entities to encourage people to complete the census. But unfortunately, there are always populations that are at risk of not being as well counted. And the issue with that is, of course, that then whether they get the appropriate amount of funding. So thank you for raising it. So that's
One last quick update. So Joli and I are working on a project and I have an update for you. So the project is there's a great information about how people who live in CB7, for instance, like get to work is one thing I'm very interested in. So like, less than 5% of people drive a car to work. the one comment that often comes up is what are people who work in CB7? And unfortunately, there is a Puma that's about, but it's at the Manhattan level. So they won't give you the CB7 level,
Yeah.
which is disappointing, right? Because I want to know who works in CB7. Joli connected me to this group at the census who said they will give us the data, but we need to pay them $3,000. So, A, can we get them to not ask that, or does anyone have $3,000? Government.
I have to say, you're not like I feel like you're not the only community board that's very eager to know who's, one tool that I didn't show was something called On the Map, where you see people going, who lives and works in a certain geographic area, who's coming in from outside that area and working in it, and who's leaving the area and working somewhere else. And so we have that data, so we have a sense of how many people are coming in, but we don't know exactly how they're commuting in. And or whether they're if they're carpooling, if they're driving car. We know when they live here. We have a very nice sense of whether they're carpooling, driving, staying at home to work. Alex, I'm impressed that you got that far, because I had this year.
3,000 is the minimum, they said.
Yeah, it's very steep to do.
I was
Well,
gonna message Gail Brewer.
there's a I know you wanted access. There's like a super duper database that really is only for academic on-site 5-year projects that Alex, we wanted to give Alex access to, but they would not let you go into the super duper database. But I hope that everyone feels empowered to, use census data more and in your work, and great efforts for, I'm a local resident here, so I'm incredibly grateful for the work of CB7.
That we're grateful that you came.
Yes, very much.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Leave you to your other business. But feel free to be in touch.
Thank you.
Max will send out the presentation of my information.
And we should
take
think
a
about
picture.
whether we want to have some working sessions to familiarize those of you who wish to kind of dig a little bit and get comfortable with it, because unless you use it, it's hard, right?
And now that we have the screen, we'd be glad, and the budget committee will be glad to facilitate, and we can use the screen and work together.
And thank you for all the lovely stickers and things.
I know it's not quite the coffee cups I had during the decennial. Something.
Does everyone, those of you who are on Zoom, we will save these for you, and you can get them maybe at full board or something when you come.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you see like each state?
All right.
Seema needs to.
Yes.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we should very quickly do what we normally do at steering committee, which is to run through the list of committees, and please let us know what you're anticipating in your coming meetings, and whether you are likely to have any resolutions for the February board. So with that, yes, I think you've earned that. Thank you.
So we have no resolutions, but the budget strategy committee will be asking every committee to devote the first 10 to 15 minutes of their February meeting. So we can do a presentation on what your budget priorities were for fiscal year 2025. We're going to go through the district needs using the big screen, and specific to your committee. And we will also start the budget process for the fiscal year 2026, which will be due in June, at least for the district needs part and the budgeting request. So
And the timing is interesting because the mayor will be coming out with his January plan for next year before the end of this month.
and additionally, city planning will send us sometime in February. Some will be before your meetings, and some will be after your meetings. What the responses from the different agencies for the budget requests that we submitted in the fall. Right, thank you.
That's the part I want. I'm always like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Because we asked for it. What
Well,
happened?
we know
Yeah.
they're major cuts, so we'll try and gather as much of that
Oh,
information.
although the mayor has been announcing restoration
Yeah.
over the last several days, so that's good news. We'll see how that all plays out one way or another. Okay, Kristen, wanna talk about why?
Yeah, youth education libraries, we're meeting this Thursday evening here at 6:30. We have two agenda items. One is potential reciting of a school in the district, another building, the former Ascension School. It had a longer name. Catholic school closed, that building is now vacant. There's some demand for expansion. And there are two co-located schools, the ones being talked about right now, although frankly, I think it would be open to other potential schools in the district are co-located as the elementary school PS 145 with the middle school West Prep. There seems to be some tension and demand on space in that building. Neither school seems to want to move. So there are two pretty unhappy school communities right now. One of them reached out to us to come present. I said yes. So I'm trying to get hold of the other school to get their PTA president to come and present so that we get to hear from both schools. I also want to be very clear at our committee meeting that we are not the voting body on this. There's like a very formal process in the DOE and it is actually outlined. So I just emailed district planning to send me their calendar again, because for those communities, they will have specific marks like this date, this kind of meeting has to happen. In 6 weeks, the next step meeting has to happen. So that at the very least, I feel like I can educate them a little bit on some of the requirements that the DOE should be giving them. And then we can learn about the situation. I'm totally confident we will not weigh in by the next full board. I don't know if they want us to play a role in the long run. That might happen. But for now, it's just finding out what's going on. And then our second issue, which we gentleman came to present us actually in public session a couple of months ago. Do you want to speak to that, Kevin?
Yep.
Do you know more about that?
Yeah, so Al Curlin, he's an advocate for the New York State Legislature to lower the New York State to lower the minimum voting age from 18 to 16. He actually spoke, I believe, at one of our YEL meetings. He spoke remotely and he shared some data about the advantages of lowering the voting age from 18 to 16. He shared statistics. This has been done in several municipalities in Norway and other European countries, and even some municipalities in the US. And data statistics shows that it increases significantly voter engagement once they voted in their first election.
Yes, they just did it. Was it Colorado? They just did it.
It was Colorado, that's right.
Yeah,
And
they
I
passed
think
it like this
I
week.
think Newark.
New Jersey did it.
Newark.
Yes.
Well, Newark is a public
Yes.
school.
But only
for school board.
Only
Yeah.
school board. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That'll be interesting to hear.
And actually, several community boards have already passed resolutions. Community Board 12, Community Board 11, East Harlem. And it's got overwhelming support by a lot of our elected officials, Gail Brewer, Shona Brew, and Assemblyman, I can't think of his name, Berger?
Dan O'Donnell? No, that's me.
No.
So,
Are you expecting a resolution or will that? just be-
Probably just because it's got popular support, so likely I think it'll pass
Resolution.
in YEL on Thursday. And we'll have a
Okay.
resolution.
so good to hear,
Yeah.
but we are not gonna do a resolution on the other matter, I understand.
Our junior will be present.
Parks,
So we have our meeting on Monday, this upcoming Monday. We have 3 things on our agenda. The first one is going to be a discussion related to the renovation of the dinosaur playground. That's the one that we had passed through in committee before and also at the full board enthusiastically for the resolution. They want to come back and present on adding a specific entrance to the park, so it's modified. They want to expand the scope a little bit, so they're asking for a modified or new resolution. We'll take a look at it and it'll likely pass first in the committee.
It's a lovely plan.
Yeah. The other two things are the Department of Sanitation is going to come visit to give us a presentation on the containerization program. It's an update, so there are no resolutions that are expected for that meeting. We'll, if you guys want to attend, it should be very interesting. And then the last one is Kyle Athide from Community Board 6. He was chair of Community Board 6. He's going to give a presentation on the Lincoln Center Outreach Program. And I'm not exactly sure specifically if it's only related to the Damrosch Park or just any other aspects of it. So we will, we'll give it an update at the next meeting. There's no resolution needed for that too. And then lastly, I just wanted to make sure that our meeting moved to Tuesday, February 12th versus before it was on President's Day. So we currently actually don't have anything on the agenda for the February.
Okay.
Did anything come up about improved or renovated bathrooms at the dinosaur playground?
You said that.
We
I read there was
talked
a
about
problem.
it. It's always a request, and we talked about it initially in committee, and it was actually discussed a little bit at full board. But this presentation and the scope within this plan that they have is not going to include the bathroom renovations at all. Like it's completely just primarily because
they don't have the funds.
they have it's millions of dollars. They presented to LPC and they presented to the Public Design Committee. And essentially the same question was asked, can you please put bathrooms or touch any of the bathroom on the upper terrace of the dinosaur playground? And when they were asked to estimate, they said multiple millions. So
Yeah, we
there's
could
no
put that
funds
in
for
as
it.
a budget request, but
yeah,
that's really.
there's for that specific project, there's no budget for it to address all the needs specific to those bathrooms.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Andrew, transportation.
We don't have any resolutions. We had a long discussion on daylighting and that will come up again in February, as will public comment period on congestion pricing, which promises to be quite something. But since the MTA is starting their public outreach on February 29th and the first week of March, we thought we should get it in before everybody else is doing it. So in case folks want to go to all of those as well.
So you'll have a resolution on the daylighting matter?
No.
At next month's
At
meeting.
next month's meeting, yes.
So it's being discussed next month or this month?
That's being discussed in February.
February.
I have a question.
We had our meeting already this month.
I don't know if it falls in transportation, but I know there was a public meeting about curb use. And so I don't know whose, and that falls under, but,
We follow it.
It's ours.
and then, and there was a link that said
Smart
this is
curbs.
how you
That's
can
what you're
like
talking about.
The smart
speak
curbs.
up about it. I couldn't go to the meeting in person at PS9. I looked at the link. It made no sense to me whatsoever how you could like comment or participate.
On the map.
Yeah, it was like you
Active
can
map.
tell if there has been an incident. It wasn't like, I think this is the way this space could be used. It was like, has there been an accident? I was like, no. I just wanted to tell you that like. It was a very
attended-
difficult public
It
comment,
wasn't the
so I was
most
wondering if
user-friendly.
there is another process
Very.
to be involved.
I attended the virtual version of their meeting. I didn't go to the other one. And it was, breakout rooms and people talking about
Right.
a series of different possible treatments that DOT has considered for this project and people commenting on them and talking about locations in their project area, which is 72nd Street to 86th Street,
Right.
Broadway
Central Park
to
West.
Central Park West. That these things could be used in. So I think they're doing lots of outreach, but frankly, if you had issues around, I mean, I don't know whether your committee is planning on doing some kind of data collection around this, but individuals can also just write, you know, in this block, this is something that I would like to see, and just send
Right,
it.
that's what I was trying to do through that link and I couldn't do it. It was
Yeah.
like you had
It's
to
just
put a
separate.
pin.
We're gonna have a
Separately.
summary from DOT on all of the comments and have them present at one of our committee meetings, for sure.
But how do I submit comments? Is that-
We'll get that to you.
Okay,
Okay.
thank
You
you.
know,
you.
this strikes me as one of those projects by DOT that's never going to see the light of day. It just doesn't. There's so many things that DOT doesn't do, having to do with the restaurant structures and a million other things that they have.
Loading zones.
And, you know, whatever, all kinds of things. And this project is dense and huge. I just don't think it's ever gonna happen.
Well, they've picked out the west side as a pilot.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of attention from the mayor's office. I think they will try to do something. The question is, what will the quality be and the level of thought going into it? And we can impact that, so we definitely
Yes,
should
and we
work
will.
to do so.
Big turnout, I think, at PS9, and then I was on the virtual meeting as
Yeah,
well.
it's on that as well.
Yeah, I think, I think they are gonna do something.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. And thank you. Land use and housing?
Sure.
Yes, so we have agenda item, so there is a proposed rule change by the city. Which would fast track the environmental review process for new housing developments that have affordable housing. So that would be in a medium to high density area, which our district is. It would be 250 units or less. You could essentially, provided you were within certain parameters, size and otherwise, you would be able to fast track the environmental review process, which usually takes 8 to 12 months. That slows down a lot of these projects. That's probably the reason why these projects are, not feasible. So they published the rule, and we've circulated it among the committee. I circulated some comments, and we'll discuss it tomorrow at our meeting.
Great. Do you think a resolution would emerge from this?
I think so, yes.
Ben, BCI.
Yeah, so ours is hi everyone. Ours is very simple today. We actually didn't have any applications the last period, and so for the first time since I've been here, we actually didn't have a BCI meeting. We expect to we have applications for the next session, and so we should be having resolutions in the next time around.
Okay, Ben, are there any additional cannabis applications, or is it all liquor license?
I would say that statement encompasses both. We didn't have applications for either last month around.
But the ones that you've received currently for next month?
I don't have an update on that yet. But I think yeah, I don't know, Max, do you have an update on liquor and cannabis?
Right now, we don't have anyone. It's strange because other boards are starting to see some new ones again. But we haven't, so we don't have anything. It'll just be the normal street life applications as of now. But what I'm trying to say is that could very well change between now and when the meeting is.
Okay.
I think there were about 1,700 licenses are being reviewed by the state right now, and they're going to, in no particular order, and they're going to be announcing which of those licensees are awarded. So I think a lot of the applicants are waiting.
Right.
That's why we're having a lull.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Will, HHS?
Yes, hi. So our Health and Human Service Committee meeting was moved from Tuesday to Thursday, January 25th at the same time at 7 p.m. We're having an update on the West 83rd Street Safe Haven. So we don't have any pending resolutions. The update and presentation will be the team that's running the West 83rd Street Safe Haven. and the reporting and telling us how they're managing that building. In addition to, I might be jumping the gun here, but there's a gentleman, I can't recall his name, who's done immense research on plastics and the effects it has on our environment and even on our bodies. And so don't know if that's happening for this month. It might be for February. But fun fact, Assemblymember Rosenthal has a bill in Albany in regards to plastics as well. So depending on how the stars will align, she may drop in for that topic. And yeah, so that's all I have. HHS.
Thank you. Preservation, we don't have anyone here. Okay, so that's it. Have I missed, seniors?
Oh, the task force, we're meeting this Thursday. We did not meet in December because it was so close to the holidays. And food insecurity is a major, a really major concern.
Okay. Any old business or new business? Any further comments from anyone? Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, I'm leaving the attendance on the table. There was no sheet today, so just represent, okay?
Okay, yep.